It doesn't matter what year you are. I'm head of the associates. If I give you an assignment, you do it.
Hey, everybody. This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good looking friends. It's finally here, the Archewell tax return for 2021. We're going to rip this to shreds. Let's go. Before we get into this, let's talk about how a public charity can lose its tax exempt status. We all know that Archewell is not a foundation, but indeed a public charity. So, in order for Archewell to maintain its public charity tax exempt status, these are the rules that you have to follow. Number one, private benefit. A 501c3 organization's activities should be directed towards some exempt purpose. Its activities should not serve the private interests or private benefit of any individual or organization more than insubstantially. Inurement. A 501c3 organization is prohibited from allowing its income or assets to benefit insiders, typically board members, officers, directors, and important employees of an organization. If an organization benefits insiders, the insiders and the organization could be subject to penalty, excise taxes, and the organization could lose its tax exempt status. Number two, lobbying. Lobbying is when an organization contacts or urges the public to contact members or employees of a legislative body or an executive branch official who may participate in the formulation of legislation for the purpose of proposing, supporting, and or opposing legislation, or when the organization advocates the adoption or rejection of legislation. While a 501c3 organization is allowed to do some lobbying, too much can hurt its tax-exempt status. Its lobbying activities cannot be more than an insubstantial part of its overall activities. Number three, political activity. All 501c3 organizations are prohibited from participating in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate running for public office. The prohibition applies to all campaigns at the federal, state, and local levels. Number four, unrelated business income. Earning too much income generated from unrelated activities can jeopardize an organization's 501c3 tax-exempt status. The income comes from a regularly carried on trade or business that is not substantially related to the organization's exempt purpose. However, there are some modifications, exclusions, and exceptions. Number five, annual reporting obligation. While 501c3 public charities are exempt from federal income tax, the Internal Revenue Code requires most of these organizations to report certain information annually. This reporting requirement, fulfilled by completion of one of the Form 990 series of returns, verifies that the organization continues to qualify for exemption and informs the public about the organization's programs and operations. And finally, number six, an organization must pursue the exempt activities it promised in its IRS application for exemption. If an organization has deviated from its original purposes, it must inform the IRS to prevent future problems. So now that you understand the base on what's required to maintain your tax-exempt status if you are running a public charity, get out a piece of paper and take some notes along with me, and let's determine if we need to open up a case with the IRS for them to do an audit. Let's see how impactful Archewell has been in the year of 2021. Okay, so let's begin. Archewell Foundation, address, we all know where that's located, and the principal officer is James A. Holt. It almost appears that James is running the full show. So according to this, Archewell is reporting gross receipts of $13,005,660. So part one is really a summary of the organization. It says Number 1, briefly describe the organization's mission or most significant activities. Archewell Foundation is an impact-driven nonprofit created by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Guys, does this answer the question to number 1? No, it doesn't. It doesn't tell us anything. So now when we look at the people involved in this organization, if we check out number 5, it says total number of individuals employed in calendar year 2021. And they have listed 2 people. Does anybody find that number suspect? So when you look at number 6, it says total number of volunteers, stating 2. Does that mean that Mandana Dayani was volunteering her time? And was Toya Holness also volunteering her time? Archewell's not off to a good start. Let's now look at the number breakdown. So they're claiming gross $13,005,660. With expenses taken out now, you have $3,096,319 in grants or amounts paid to charities. Salaries, $163,085. And then number 17, other expenses, over $700,000, with total expenses costing $3,987,070. Subtract that from the $13,005,660, and you get $9,018,590. So let's talk about the total assets. It's showing as $9,150,559. The assets section here of this nonprofit public charity defines what the nonprofit owns. It includes items like cash assets, accounts receivable, property, and equipment investments, long-term receivables, prepaid expenses, and other things. So when we look at the liabilities, it's showing that it's $131,969. This means that this is something. So when we look at liabilities, it's showing $131,969. And this includes things like accounts payable, debt, and other expenses. For instance, example, this is where they would add expenses owed to the employees, vendors, and contractors if they're using it. So finally, the last line are the net assets, and that's the total assets minus the total liabilities, and that shows the equity of the organization. Well, I'm looking at this number already and raising a flag because I don't believe that that number should be the same number as line item number 19, revenue less expenses. So we'll get into all of that to validate whether or not this was improperly filed. So let's see who prepared this filing. Lisbeth Navarez from Green, Hassan, and Jenks LLP. Okay, that's the accountant, and they have James Holt signing off on this. I wonder if James Holt fully understands that he is taking on the liability here in putting his name here in case, let's say, this does go through an audit and turns out that they have been inaccurately reporting stuff, that he is subject to penalties of perjury. Let's hope that James has a good lawyer, because what I can see happening is by design, they put this guy to take the fall because he is from Great Britain and could claim that he didn't know any better. He doesn't know how the US tax system works. I'm telling you, these two, I would put nothing past them in trying to make sure that their hands have been kept clean. And that includes throwing the very same people that are serving them under the bus. At the bottom there, it says, see Schedule O for Organization Mission Statement Continuation. Oh, okay. I'm glad that they put that there because initially that statement in the beginning totally missed the mark. So let's take a look at what page O says. Okay, it says, Archewell's foundation core purpose is to uplift and unite communities, local and global, online and offline, one act of compassion at a time. Archewell Foundation believes that compassion is the defining cultural force of the 21st century, and through its work, Archewell Foundation supports a growing community of partner organizations fueling systemic cultural change. Archewell Foundation listens to people and their community, helps them tell their stories, puts real action behind its words, and spotlights a new generation of leadership. No, it doesn't. I can't wait for the IRS to have a field day on these two. So the next page, part 3, is the statement of program service accomplishments. This is supposed to show the impact that Archewell has had in 2021. So again, they have to restate the mission, and they put the same BS statement that we saw in the O page. And then now when you scroll down and you go to number 2, it says, did the organization undertake any significant program services during the year which were not listed on the prior Form 990 or 990EZ? So they put no because they filed this less than 50,000 receipts, even though we know that that's BS. Okay, so now let's look at number 4. And it says, describe the organization's program service accomplishments for each of its 3 largest program services as measured by expenses. Section 501c3 and 501c4 organizations are required to report the amount of grants and allocations to others, the total expenses, and revenue, if any, for each program service reported. So on this report, they only have 1 program listed. And as you can see, it's the same mission statement and same BS that really doesn't give any type of metrics or impact that the organization has made in 2021. They're listing $3.6 million in expenses, and the grants that were part of that was $3,096,319. So they're reporting that they gave $3,096,319 out in grants to people. We're going to go through all of that, but I just want you to see that we had 13 million and now we're only seeing 3 million. Wait for it. So here I want to point something out to you. On the next page, it says, Part 4, number 1, is the organization described in Section 501c3 or 4947A1 other than a private foundation? If yes, complete Schedule A. What do you know, guys? They are acknowledging that they are a public charity and not a foundation, which I have been saying all along that there are specific guidelines that they have to adhere to, especially when it comes to donation money and being transparent in how they're spending it. That they haven't been doing. Continuing on, the other red flag that I'm raising here is item number 4, where it says Section 501c3 organizations. Did the organization engage in lobbying activities or have a Section 501h election in effect during the tax year? If yes, complete Schedule C, Part 2. You notice they have marked no, but I'm going to contest that because in 2021, who could forget that Archewell was so generous to give Starbucks gift cards to the nonprofit lobbying organization for paid family leave? As you notice, it's October 31st, 2021, so that did fall into the calendar year of 2021, which should have been reported. But sadly, it wasn't. What is Archewell doing? Let's continue on. As we go through the schedules, we'll be reverting back to some of these line items. But at the bottom where it says Section C disclosure, item number 18, I want anybody who has written to Archewell or submitted an email, because I know there are people out there that have requested a copy of the information for this tax return. And as it says here, Section 6104 requires an organization to make its forms 1023, 1024, blah, 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 available for public inspection. Indicate how you made these available. Check all that apply. As you can see, it says upon request. So, for those that have reached out to Archewell and requested this information, please contact the IRS and let them know that if you didn't receive it, let them know that they didn't provide it. This is completely valid. So, next, we're going to look at the employees and compensation for Archewell. Well, looky here. So, as you can see, James Holt is the one-man show. He is actually the only one receiving compensation. Then you have Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and Prick Harry. But what's really interesting is look at numbers 4, 5, and 6. We have Andrew Meyer, we have Rick Geno. They all left in 2021. So here's my question. What happened to Mandana? What happened to Toya Holness? You mean to tell me that the Duke and Duchess didn't pay them and that they were doing this for volunteer purposes? Somehow I doubt that. But then also again, if James is running the entire show, it kind of makes Meghan and Harry look really cheap since they're only paying him $60,000. Come on, guys. Like seriously, you're pocketing $9 million. Come on, James. Seriously, this is not even competitive in the United States for nonprofits. Like, you look like a fool. Also, whatever happened to Ben Browning, he also was contributing to Archewell Foundation. I mean, there were quite a few employees that they had hired. You mean to tell me that they didn't pay any of them? Nah, something's wrong here. They need to really look at this. And it says a lot, too, when you see the business manager or longtime entertainment lawyer and Andrew K. Meyer, who left in 2021. You got to wonder, what was that all about? Was she not paying them, or did she not get along with them like the rest of the staff? It is telling when you look at the amount that they're paying their actual employee versus the amount that they're paying these contractors, such as Invisible Hand and KMLSA. Now, both of these organizations are strategic advisors for the Democrats. Invisible Hand, as you guys remember, Genevieve Roth, she was hired on as an advisor for Archewell. Let's remember that Genevieve Roth is a racist and that she also worked on the Hillary Clinton campaign. So we all know which ideology she's pushing and what agenda she is supporting. The other organization that they hired and contracted also did advising for Michelle Obama. In fact, she was Michelle Obama's press secretary. So we all know where Meghan's head was at when they hired these two contractors and paid them an outrageous amount of money for I don't even know what, because look at their brand now. It's in the toilet. Anyhow, moving on, let's look at where they got this $13 million from. Here's the revenue statement breakdown. As you can see, it looks quite anemic. So here's a closer view as to where they got their revenue. As you can see, there were no federated campaigns. They don't have any type of membership to be a part of Archewell. They held 0 fundraising events, which I would challenge because we have seen the Sussex Squad throw so many birthday parties and raised money for World Central Kitchen and Africa and you name it. They were collecting money, in which Meghan actually thanked one of those Sussex Squad members, the really sick ones who were threatening the royal family, but she did acknowledge that she was grateful that they were fundraising for Archewell. Like to know where that money went. No government grants or contributions. All other contributions, gifts, grants, and similar amounts not included above, which that's where they put the money or Okay, for our purposes, we're just going to focus on column A because it is the total of expenses. So when we look at grants and other assistance that Meghan and Harry gave to U.S. organizations to further their political agenda, it's about $2.9 million. As far as grants and assistance to foreign entities, that's $186,319. Now, if you add those two together, that's where you get the $3,096,319. Okay, so now the rest of this money, as you can see, we've got compensation for the one employee that they were paying, James Holt. You then have other salaries and wages, which probably is some kind of money for the work that maybe Toya and Mandana Dayani. Also, you can see legal fees at over 200,000. The number that's jumping out of me right now is line G, where it says other, for almost $500,000. But so let's take a look at what this almost $500,000 was for. So here we have the actual breakdown, and what they have listed here is program service expenses, 366,000. For what? Oh, right. Could some of this money be for the fake royal tour that they took in New York in 2021? Let's remember they took a private jet, and Meghan's wardrobe cost more than James Holt's annual salary. But security is not included in this because I remember New York paid for that, and that came out of my money. But this money, I mean, really, what else could it be? Anyhow, mark this as a red flag. So when the IRS do their audit, they can ask for the actual receipts, line item by line item. Anyhow, continuing on now to the balance sheet. Okay, so starting with the assets. As you recall from the very beginning, I showed you the difference between the revenue and then the assets and then the net assets total. So according to this, it's saying that they have $24,369 in cash, and then they have from savings and temporary cash investments, so cash in a bank somewhere, and you see a total value of assets of $9,150,559. Now, just keep that number in the back of your head because they're claiming that this is the cash that they have in the bank somewhere, right? And with their liabilities, they have outlined that they have $131,969 for whatever that may be. Not sure. Anyhow, the net is the $9,018,590. So they're claiming that this money that came from their revenue, remember that, this is part of their revenue being brought in. This to me appears like they're pulling a fast one on the American people. Let's remember from the very beginning, you have to follow the nonprofit guidelines. If you're awarded this public charity status, remember, in order to qualify for it, a certain percentage of public funds have to be contributed. So when they applied for this nonprofit status, public charity, for the best tax benefit and breaks, they had to commit and say that a majority of their funding has come from the public. And with that, you have to show a certain percentage of the public's money being donated and being used towards whatever these programs are. But because we are now seeing that money is being stashed, this is what it appears like, stashed in a bank account somewhere, we now have to drill further. So here's where this all blows up in their face, and the IRS has good reason to get in there and do an extensive audit through all their accounts. So here's where this couple is going to get into some trouble. So remember I told you this couple keeps talking as if they're ballers and they have a foundation? Well, no, they have a public charity. And as you can see, they acknowledge that if you look in line item number 7, they check that off saying an organization that normally receives a substantial part of its support from a governmental unit or from the general public, described in section 170B 1A VI. Okay? That right there tells you that this organization, majority of its funds are coming from people like you and I, or whoever the wealthy want to throw away their money and give it to Meghan and Harry. That's still considered public. So what people have to understand is when you look at this net assets and the amount that is dedicated with restrictions and the amount that is not with any restrictions, if you notice that 9 million has no restrictions on it, meaning Meghan and Harry pocketed this money. And here's why now Archewell should be investigated, because they are claiming that 13 million came from public funds. Now let's take a look at the contributors who donated money to Archewell Foundation. As you can see, this looks really sketch. You have two contributors, one who is a person that gave 10 million and another person who gave 3 million. Could that be where the Disney money went? Now, I'm not sure why they left this piece blank, because it is recorded in a DAF, that $10 million. As you can see, this is a DAF, $10 million. And the cause area is for general nonprofit support, so unrestricted funding. So pretty much pocketing the 9 or 10 million that you see reflected in Harry and Meghan's pocket. Add that to the list of red flags when you report this to the IRS. Now let's take a look at how they spent the $3 million that actually went to programs and where they went. So for this schedule, this talks about Archewell's activity outside the United States. So they have been giving money or grants to something in Europe, Iceland, and Greenland. In 2021, there was zero communication or zero evidence that money was being given to Europe, especially in the region of Iceland and Greenland. So I would like to know, what exactly is that money for? Now, this is something that the IRS needs to look at, so I'd put this down as a red flag. I would not put it past Meghan and Harry to jump on this bandwagon, as millionaires and billionaires are trying to rush out to Greenland because of global warming and all the ice melting. It's because they're looking to pillage this resource of significant nickel and cobalt deposits. And what this will do, and hence why we see all this push towards electric this and electric that, is because it has the capability or the potential in powering 100 million electric vehicles and other things. These types of rare minerals that are now being uncovered is a result of the ice caps melting out up in Greenland and Iceland. So do I believe that this money or grant that was written probably went to something towards climate change, but really it's going towards this type of exploration? Absolutely. But did Archewell ever disclose or communicate that to the public? No, they didn't. And that is also a violation in which they were not being transparent, if that is the case. But that's why the IRS needs to investigate. More money going to Europe, one for 150,000 to go for furthering efforts to improve access to COVID vaccines. And as you can see, that's all the money that was given to foreign entities, to the Europe, Iceland, Greenland area. So here's what I want to know. If they're stating here, if you look at it, furthering efforts to improve access to COVID vaccines globally, and then bullshit mental health, and then diversity throughout. I mean, seriously, diversity throughout Iceland and Greenland? Come on now. I mean, you just can't make this up. This stinks to high hell. If they were trying to get vaccines out globally, why weren't there any transfers or grants written to India or Africa, the places that really need it? What the hell is this shit? Oh, right. This looks like charity fraud. Now let's look at the domestic causes that Archewell gave money to, which is now less than 3 million. All right, so here we go. First, we start off with World Central Kitchen. Allegedly, they gave a cash grant of $300,000 to develop 4 community relief centers to help provide food in crisis. So remember, they had promised or committed to build 4 centers, one in Puerto Rico, one in Dominica, one in India, and the 4th one hadn't been decided yet. I'm calling bullshit on this, because guess what? World Central Kitchen didn't even report this in their report, nor in their 2021 tax return. So IRS, flag this and investigate. As you can see from the 2021 World Central Kitchen IRS form, nowhere in their programs that they have described talks about these centers that Meghan and Harry had given money to. So, again, red flag. And I believe now World Central Kitchen is going to be under investigation as a result of it not aligning. Where is that 300,000? The next one is for Harvard for $250,000. My guess is that Meghan was trying to buy a doctorate from Harvard. And here it says the reason is for expanding fellowship program at the Institute for Rebooting Social Media. Again, another think tank in which they are actively trying to censor the internet. So once again, I can't express enough that we have a foreign prince on US soil who is actively trying to undermine our Constitution and affect our government by taking away our civil rights, such as the First Amendment. Here is more evidence of him working with appropriate organizations who are actively trying to do this. Now, the next one appears legit, Team Rubicon. And that was for $250,000 going towards supporting families evacuated from Afghanistan. Now, I believe that Harry might have had something to do with this, but there's always an ulterior motive with these two. I just haven't figured it out with what they're doing with Team Rubicon, possibly supporting the US plan around our military, whatever, I don't know. Making Biden happy, who knows? Now, let's remember that this Team Rubicon donation was done at the very end of December 2021. It was almost like a throw money quickly at an organization and then broadcast it to the world around the holidays saying that the public's money was donated. They donated on the public's behalf to this initiative that no one knew about. Just remember that. I think the next one, the UCLA Foundation, also needs to be investigated by the IRS because, hear this, that $250,000 in the grant coming from Archewell went for fellowship and research at the Center for Critical Internet Inquiry. Now, who do we know at that center that runs it? Yes, Safiya Noble. She is the one that won the Archewell Digital Justice bullshit award from the NAACP. And now she's got this money, and on top of that, more money from Archewell. I just see money circulating in a circle, guys. Do you see how this is working? Now, the question is, what actual impact has this division made for societal change, aside from being more divisive and spewing out misinformation? Let's not forget the Netflix mockumentary and the article that she wrote based off of a report from a Fugazi bot company that was there to push out pure propaganda. You see where I'm going with this? That's why not only does Archewell need to be investigated, but now UCLA Foundation needs to be investigated, because what they have done is not actually help society, they actually hurt society for the mere fact of pushing out misinformation, gaslighting the public, and causing division based off of race relations, all for their own personal gain. So 250,000 there, another 125,000 from the NAACP via the route of Archewell. Again, money in Safiya Noble's pocket. Probably that's how they paid her for doing the Netflix mockumentary. Seriously, I'm so tempted to enroll in a class at NYU or Cornell that's teaching this terrible, harmful ideology around critical race and oppression, and having a debate with one of these professors, because honestly, what they are doing is so destructive to society that I can't understand how we're funding so much money from our government into this crap. So back to this, we have the National Women's Law Center in DC for another $200,000, which it says here general support plus funding study into the impact of the pandemic on working women in the US. Well, let's talk about the National Women's Law Center. Anybody know what the National Women's Law Center is? Well, it's another one of these advocating and lobbying entities that focuses on paid family leave, ethnic justice. We've got LGBTQ, this whole abortion rights. I mean, you name it, it's everything that the female movement that went sideways is all about. So, a part of this actually incorporates and administers the Time's Up. Remember that Fugazi organization where all those celebrities took all that money that was donated and actually didn't get to the victims? But yeah, they're the ones that administer the legal defense fund that Time's Up is surrounded around. So, no, I don't trust these people. I honestly see more grifting going on and it's money circulating around in a circle. So, again, I question the angle or the purpose of Archewell supporting it because it seems like it's more for political reasons. Again, we go back into the rules, can't really be executing, personal initiatives, which it does look like all of this so far has been for the personal agenda of Meghan and Harry. Let's remember in the Archewell mission statement that they put on this IRS form was that Archewell Foundation listens to people and their communities, helps them tell their stories. Well, I'm not seeing any stories from 2021. Do you? So we have a foundation here who essentially is taking public donations and using it to undermine and take advantage of vulnerable minorities in these disenfranchised communities. As you can see, they're preying off of people of color. They're going after Black and brown communities, as well as let's look at Cortigo. So Cortigo for $100,000, as you can see, right under URL Media, which is another Black and brown company that is supposed to be lifting up voices, but not really. Cortigo is investing in innovative tech solutions to improve community engagement. What they're doing and what Cortigo is an AI company that has been collecting data and at the same time working with government agencies. So far, what I'm seeing is that Archewell is politically motivated, and it's worth the IRS to look into it because of the affiliations and the engagement, or lack of engagement, but just throwing money out there in order to move politically in the right circles. We see that with the associations, the contractors. It all seems energy focused towards this political agenda. And in my opinion, if we were going by the rules of nonprofit status, it should be revoked immediately, especially because we're seeing funds that are being misappropriated, in my opinion, and funds that look like they have disappeared. And here's the last page of grants that had been given out. As you can see, we've got paid leave for the United States. We have women for Afghan women, Georgetown University, Stanford University, a lot of organizations that are pushing the Democratic political agenda. As you can see, a majority of these social justice programs do have lobbying arms that go off and champion for legislation changes. This is why Archewell should be disqualified from being tax exempt, because the focus seems to be predominantly politically focused. As you can see from looking at a handful of the organizations that Archewell has given grants to, a majority of them have been focused on the media. So now you can see that Prince Harry has directly and indirectly has his tentacles into institutions as well as into our government in order to sabotage and affect our civil rights. I personally think that we need to put a stop to it. So if you stuck with me up until this point, I am hoping that you can agree that the IRS definitely needs to go in and do a full-on audit because there's stuff missing. And quite frankly, I think misappropriation of funds. Also, they haven't reported everything. Like what happened to the $25,000 that they were giving to Melba's in Harlem? Or what happened to the donation that was given to Homeboy Industries? You see, this does need to be looked under a microscope, and we need to see where money is going because this doesn't look legit. And if they are pocketing $9 million or $10 million of the public's money, then the public needs to know because how impactful is Archewell being if Meghan and Harry are keeping the money for themselves? In closing, after reviewing this, it is my opinion that Archewell is a scam and misappropriating funds. And I say that because I've just showed you where it doesn't make sense and where they need to provide some explanation. Also, as you look at the last page, I find it very interesting that they mention and state that Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, are married. Certain officers of the foundation, through their firms, have a business relationship with the directors outside of the foundation. Those individuals and their firms received no compensation from the foundation, and all services provided by those parties to the foundation were rendered pro bono. So you mean to tell me that Toya Holness worked for free, Mandana Dayani worked for free, Christine Shermer worked for free? Nah, I don't buy it. And I think that that's another red flag, and the IRS needs to look into it. But I'm looking for your opinion. Do you think that my assessment is accurate in what I'm looking at? And do you think that there is fraud going on with Archewell Public Charity? If you want to file a complaint, because I know I am, here is the information. You can write to them or call them because they will give you information on the right forms, or they may even take the case over the phone. But they are accessible. The number is there at 877-829-5500. In my opinion, I think that Archewell is doing more harm than good to society. And that is going to also be a part of this case that I file. Because clearly, as you can see, the motivations and the political agenda that is clearly being carried out by Prince Harry and Meghan, who ultimately want to affect our constitutional civil freedoms. And James Holt could be in a lot of trouble because his name is on this document. So James, if you're listening, get yourself a lawyer and get out as soon as you can. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Also, please share it wherever you can. It does help create the awareness. And let me know in the comments below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
It was such a fraud.